And our next speaker is going to be Sean Sellers. And Sean's going to discuss the grassroots efforts for renewable energy, and he's a volunteer chair of the Sarasota Climate Justice Coalition. The coalition comprises more than 15 community, faith, and student groups working together to foster resiliency, promote a just and equitable transition to a low-carbon society. Take it away, Sean.
Great. I'm still holding out on PowerPoint, just in general, so I'm going to leave Christine's up there so it's not empty and sad. My name is Sean Sellers. I'm with the Suncoast Climate Justice Coalition. You heard a little bit earlier today from Stevie Freeman Montez at the city about the Ready for 100 initiative. That is a result of the efforts of the Suncoast Climate Justice Coalition. So we were formed in 2017. We're now comprised of about 20 organizations from the different sectors that the MC mentioned. There's really two functions of the coalition. One, it serves as a clearinghouse for the organizations that are involved so they can exchange information, keep each other updated on their activities, that sort of thing. And it's also become a space for us to really focus on some collective campaigns. And to date, that has been the Ready for 100 initiative. A little bit of background on how we got that jump started. The Sierra Club at a national level had launched this campaign a couple years ago, and some local Sierra Club members, including Lynn Nielsen in the back, brought this to the coalition, and she asked, what can we do to make this happen here? And so a number of people formed a working group in the coalition and decided to get it going. So in the space of a couple of months, we gathered about 2,000 petition signatures in the community. We got 40 organizations and businesses to sign on to the resolution. We had one-on-one meetings with all the city commissioners. And since there's been long-standing efforts in the city of Sarasota to elect decent progressive city commissioners, it actually wasn't that tough of a sell. And we were able to get this passed on a 5-0 unanimous vote in June of 2017. So that's all good. It's committed the city to a 100% renewable energy municipal power footprint by 2030 with a community-wide target of 2045 for both the electricity and the transportation sectors. The focus is now on implementation. We're looking at top-down measures such as addressing the building codes in the city, as well as bottom-up efforts to actually get more renewable energy out there. And members of the Ready for 100 group have been involved in the solar co-ops here in Florida, which have been tremendously successful and resulted in dozens and dozens of new residential solar installations. So that's all fine and well. We're proud of our work. We take it seriously. We work hard on it. But I also want to be very clear that this is entirely insufficient. I mean, if the gravity of Tim's presentation actually penetrates people's consciousness, we're just nibbling around the edges. And I want to plant the question here, what is it that we're actually prepared to do to address climate disruption? What is going to be, you know, if we want to use, I'm not a big militaristic guy, but if we're going to use a Pearl Harbor analogy, what's going to be our Pearl Harbor moment? What's going to get us on a wartime footing, and what is that actually going to look like in practice? You know, Ready for 100 is not going to avert climate change, simply put. Do we have to do it? Absolutely. Is it necessary? Yes. Is it sufficient? No. There's a new biography out right now by Frederick Douglas. Has anybody heard of this or had the chance to read it yet? It's a tremendous read. I mean, he was a really, really remarkable American, and I would encourage everybody to check this out. Frederick Douglass understood what it was going to take to end the institution of slavery, to abolish the institution of slavery. He understood that it was going to take the articulation of a political demand. And I want to ask, you know, we're in a comfortable space about sustainability, but what is our political demand? What is the demand that we're articulating to power? Who has power right now? Tim hinted at the answer. The fossil fuel industry has known about this for quite some time. There are economic actors that find the current system, the current arrangement, very profitable, and they are maintaining their power. They essentially run our political system. We cannot advance proper legislation. I mean, look at the federal level. It's an absolute joke what we're able to do on climate. Why is that? What is our political demand to change this? What are we prepared to do? As Douglas said, power concedes nothing without a demand. What is our demand? On the local level, it's been Ready for 100, but we know that we need to do more. So what we're talking about now is trying to figure out how can we start articulating some demands at the state level. Florida Power and Light, the other investor-owned utilities in the state of Florida, the arrangement is profitable for them right now. They're willing to accept that a transition to some degree to renewable energy is going to have to happen. They want to do it in a way that will maintain their monopoly power. They want to be at the center of it. And so there's a tension over whether you have centralized renewable energy through FPL or you have distributed, more democratic power systems. How do we resolve that in time to actually avert climate change? That's an open question. I don't know that anybody actually has the answer to that. But there are steps that we can take that can spur this. And I agree wholeheartedly with what Tim said. This isn't a matter of simply being able to tinker with the current systems enough to get them to where we need to go. But at the same time, we have to have some kind of pragmatic pathway, some sort of roadmap that can help move us. And I think there's some answers popping up in other states of what are some of these political demands that we can start to articulate here in Florida. So just bear with me for a second. California and Hawaii, and I'm aware that we are not California and Hawaii. We have Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott and the rest. California and Hawaii have established 100% state-level goals by 2045. Okay, so they did that through their legislatures because they have pretty progressive legislatures. Probably not an option for us here, but Nevada, this past electoral cycle, just passed a state-level constitutional amendment to establish a 50% renewable portfolio standard by 2030. 12 years from now, they want to ramp up to 50%. That's a pretty ambitious jump. In Michigan, there were citizens organizing with the support of Next Gen America to get a ballot initiative with a similar 50% target. The utilities caught wind of it and actually cut a deal and said, okay, in order to avoid the constitutional amendment, we will voluntarily commit to this. So what is it that we're looking at doing in Florida? And we don't have any firm answers, but this is a question for all of us. There's a few paths if we want to look at these sorts of targets at the state level. We can go after the legislature. I would submit that's going to be tough here with the political composition of what the legislature is in Florida. You could target FPL directly or other investor-owned utilities. My background in labor rights is actually in corporate campaigning, and it's quite effective to put pressure on corporations, on their brand image, to get them to do the sorts of things they need to do. And as an aside, FPL is owned by NextEra Energy, which is a publicly traded Fortune 500 company that positions itself nationally as a leader in renewable energy. As an additional aside, FPL's current projections, by 2030, less than 10% of their mix will be solar in Florida, less than 10%. So there's a disconnect between the parent company, the brand image of the parent company that's trading on Wall Street, and the actual reality of their subsidiary in Florida, which is, of course, one of the places that's ground zero for climate change. So you could do the corporate accountability route. And then the third option would be taking a page from what they've done in Nevada and Michigan and pursuing the ballot initiative. I think there's pluses and minuses to all of these approaches, but my point, if nothing else, is that we have to start putting forth a political demand. We have to think of ourselves as a political movement. And I understand that's uncomfortable in this space, and there's resistance to that idea. But if we don't, I don't think we're going to reach our goal. There is a little bit of hope. If anybody's been paying attention to the work around a Green New Deal that's been happening at the federal level, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, representative out of New York, who's going to be in the new Congress, she has been working with an organization called the Sunrise Movement, and they are pushing for a Green New Deal. This is a solution that, while it might not be implemented within Congress in the next 2 years or even immediately after that, the solution is actually commensurate with the problem. They're talking about getting the economy on a wartime footing to address climate change. A federal public jobs guarantee for people who want to do climate work, whether that's energy retrofits, whether that's wetlands and forest restoration to sequester carbon, broadly defined, doing the work we need to do to upgrade our infrastructure, our utilities, getting a smart grid in place. Please look into it. Figure out ways that we can take that vision, even if it's not an exact replication of that, and bring that here in Florida. We are now the third largest state, and we're asleep at the wheel. And we're not holding any of the people in power accountable. We're not holding ourselves accountable. We're simply asleep at the wheel. So I know we're not supposed to do doom and gloom when we talk about climate anymore, and that's like 10 years ago. But I'm here to get us to think of ourselves as a political movement that will articulate demands and that will be willing to make sacrifices to achieve those demands. Because it's not going to be reasoned persuasion, it's not going to be studies, those are not the things that are going to get us to avert this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean.